Microphones were on. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order this formal session of the Northern Michigan University Finance Committee. Present are Trustees Sepinen, Trustee LaPointe Dunham, ex officio NMU Board Chair Steve Young, and also President Brock Tessman. We do have other committee members present, but they will not be participating today, but listening in. We do have a few agenda items to get through. I'm going to start with Jill Compton, who's going to give us a report on the internal audit.
Thank you very much. You have before you the September Audit Open Issues Report. The first issue on the report is regarding the Americans with Disabilities Act for Accessible Communication. Anyone who's been following this issue knows that the Office for Civil Rights has been finding universities lacking in digital accessibility. So we're happy that the Justice Department issued in April of this year a clarifying regulation, and we now have a technical standard, or rather we're now required to follow a technical standard that's been in place for some time. I want to thank Dean Leslie Warren for leading the charge to develop a work group to address the new regulation, and the whole executive management team, and especially Provost Dahlman for providing the initial resources to support the work group. I'll keep you informed on our implementation of the new regulatory standard commonly called WCAG, which is an acronym for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. We have some other items dropping off the report. PCI training materials have been reviewed and finalized. The training target rolls as we add new employees, so we'll never be completely done with training, but a process is in place and recommended standards have been implemented. The lithium battery item will also drop off the report. Our Fire Marshal Lee Gould will continue to review our safety protocols. I want to point out that he convened a meeting group over the summer, and this group reviewed the lithium battery issues and implemented some safety measures prior to when our students returned in August. He'll continue to adjust these safety measures as we get feedback from students and other groups on campus. There's one item that missed the target date, and it's an item that I am responsible for implementing. This is a report item about safety protocols for student travel to domestic locations. I've interviewed many stakeholders on these issues, and we have some good ideas, but it turned out to be more complicated than I initially thought. So we want to bring more faculty in and get some faculty feedback before we put forward final recommendations. So I can continue to keep you updated on this issue.
What are the kind of issues that are coming up that need to be addressed?
Sure, that's a good question. So we have a very strong protocol for international travel registration. When we started looking deeper at student travel to domestic locations, the first thing is, what is domestic travel? So right now, if you travel to Puerto Rico or American Virgin Islands, that's considered domestic travel, and we didn't have the same kind of registration issues, even though we have the same kind of safety issues or some similar safety issues. We also have student groups who travel on behalf of the university as student employees. We have students who travel on behalf of student orgs, and in the past we've completely split the responsibility for student org travel. We've left that up to the student orgs. But when you dig a little deeper, you find out that sometimes departments sponsor the travel, and sometimes faculty or staff go with those student orgs. So it got a little bit complex, and there's some long traditions of faculty helping students advance into their initial careers, or to get some additional exposure to things that affect their careers. And we don't want to impede that in any way. We want to just make sure that we're thoughtful about the safety protocols that are required and the safety protocols that are recommended.
So if we have a biology professor and he's got some students and they're going to go to the Co-op Extension Farm in Chatham, and there's only 4 of them, and he says, hey, jump in my car, we'll go out there.
Right.
There's going to be, that used to just happen.
That used to just
But now
happen.
it's just going to be, oh, we need to check these boxes off to make sure we're doing it right.
I don't like processes that are just checking boxes off. but I don't think you meant exactly that. There'll be some additional resources available and some thoughtful processes to help keep everybody safe and protected.
Okay.
Are there any other concerns that you want to discuss before we talk about approving the report?
Jill, just one question from my side so I understand the lithium battery piece. So we've put an initial protocol in place that's meeting the standard of the fire marshal, and we're going to continue to see if there's more that we can do. But
Sure. The fire marshal addressed the concerns about students bringing their own personal equipment to campus, and also we have some university equipment with large lithium batteries. So we've been discussing the differences between the batteries that are in your phone, the batteries that are in e-bikes, the batteries that are in large drones, and coming up with a layered approach to what kind of safety standards are required.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. With that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve this report as written.
I'd like to make the motion to accept the report as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good. Thank you. Thanks, Jill.
Good job, Joe.
Next on the agenda, Gavin is going to give us a budget update on auxiliary operations, housing and residence life, general fund budget, and designated fund base. We're going to wrap them all into one, right?
Yeah, we're going to wrap them into one. I'll start out with the general fund.
Okay.
As most of you know, the general fund is really supported by primarily tuition and fees and state appropriation. And enrollment is a big part of tuition and fees. So those come together to really generate all the resources that support the overall operations of the general fund. When we started the state budget process, we had three main bills that come out. Every year you have the executive budget, you have the Senate budget, and then you have the House. Normally they don't all match. It would be a miracle if they all did. And then they negotiate or go to conference to settle that. And almost every year we've been around here is, you know, your lowest bill is about as low as you're going to go. And this year happened to be an exception where they actually went lower. So we were looking at 2.5 to 3.3 an appropriation increase. That ended up at 1.5% for all the universities. They did give us some one-time dollars of 1%. But that was a little lower than expected for the current year, but we've been able to make adjustments to stay within the overall resources. The tuition cap, even though they went even lower on the appropriation, the tuition cap remained at the lowest amount. So they went low on both. So it was a double whammy in essence on looking at our resources for the year. So in the end, 1.5% to the base is what we have to look at continuing operations. As you look at enrollment, that's where we have some good signs. We've been increasing our enrollment the last couple years, 3.0% overall, and then 1.6% for on campus, and that's what supports our base operations of the university. And so that number really helps out when you're trying to make new investments and shape the future of the university. And this year is another good year, having an enrollment increase, and we hope to have many more as we look forward. As you can see in the past, we went through quite a few years of decline. It's nice to start to be on the incline of things. So based on the enrollment changes and the state appropriation and the adjustment in the tuition rate, you can see the impact on the overall budget. $878,000 appropriation, $7 million in tuition. But one other thing we also do is we invest a lot in our financial aid programs to try to make the university very affordable. And in that area, we adjusted financial aid $2.1 million. And there's a number of programs that we've really put dollars towards, and it's our bridge program for out of state. Our tuition advantage, it allows students that qualify for the Michigan Achievement Award and receive Pell money, we will cover the difference so they can attend the university for no tuition and fees. And that's actually starting to grow as we've put that forward. This is the second year of that program. The other area is need-based aid, and every year we add dollars to need-based aid. And the other thing we did is we also have some awards that are based on sort of the merit awards for the Hardin Award. And what's the other one, Matt?
Just the Wildcat Merit Awards.
Wildcat Merit, yeah. Those are based off of the actual rate for tuition and fees, so those automatically adjust, as well as their athletic aid. So the combination of those is $2.1 million, and then in our application fee, this was the second year of removing it altogether. And again, that one was really trying to remove barriers for students, as well as the financial aid, but that application fee in particular is remove the barrier for even applying at the university, and I think that'll have long-term positive impact. So the combination of those created a $5.8 million increase, moving our base budget from $125.3 million to $131.1 million. On the expenditure side of the budget, the biggest investment we made this year was our personnel. We've talked about investing in people, and we definitely did it in this year's budget. $4.3 million investment. A lot of that's contractual obligations we have. We also did the MOU with the faculty, which created a large increase in our investments in the staff. Healthcare costs have started to climb above inflation, so there's an additional $400,000 for healthcare. Minimum wage went up this year, and it's going to potentially go up again February 1st. So that we built some dollars in for that. And then Global Campus has been growing, and some costs are in there to cover the personnel increase. As far as new investments, we made several new investments. We invested in the SHINE Assistant VP, the Executive Director of Advancement, 3 Student Success Advisors, Assistant Director of Student Success, a Wellbeing Case Manager, a Speech Language Administrative Assistant, and additional dollars needed in the DI area for a total of $898,000 of staffing investments. And some of this cost was offset because after a few years of pursuing it, we finally have MEPSers that's paid down, so we have $100,000 less to pay, which should bring the unfunded liability that we paid down to 0 for the next fiscal year.
Oh,
So that's a big, that started at about $6 million a year we're paying in. That's down to 0 now. In the area of supplies, pretty much what you're seeing there at $1.2 million, that's the normal costs of increase in supplies. You have software costs, you have facility maintenance supplies, you have increases in faculty professional development, departmental supplies, travel costs. Those are all things that every year are going up, and you just have to adjust to meet the needs for that. And then some dollars went up for global campus operations. So that's primarily the increase that you'll see in that area. That's $1.2 million. Under equipment and library acquisitions, we had some dollars built in that were going to help over time fund the first floor renovation of Hardin Hall. Instead, we're going to move that forward. It was going to take us a few years to get to it. And we plan on doing a bond issuance in March, and so we're taking those dollars to help pay for that debt service that will result from that bond issuance. And that will enable us to move forward quicker on the first floor Hardin renovation. And then we added some additional dollars in debt service, and over 2 years we plan on getting that base up to cover what we believe will be the full cost of that debt issuance. And utilities dropped by about $200,000 last year in charges to the general fund. A lot of that has to do with changes in our facilities, reducing our size in some buildings, and other cost-saving measures we've done. As far as, and that's the general fund utility portion. So that combined was $5.8 million, and again, brings us to $131.1 million budget. As far as direct new investments, I mentioned a few of them already, but you can see here the student success investments. Again, that's creating, better retention for our students, which will create better enrollment in the future. Removing barriers to access, the $1 million I talked about in financial aid, and then you can see the other areas here. So that makes up what you see in the general fund budget that is been presented to you. Any questions on the general fund before I move on to the designated fund?
No questions? Thanks, Gavin. Go ahead.
Okay. So we'll move on to the designated fund. Designated fund, it's made up of a number of areas: athletics, rec services, IT services, charter schools, public safety programs, the Bear Center, continuing ed. Number of programs where they receive outside revenues to support, but also receive general fund revenues to help balance that support. So when we look at that fund, it's about a $8.1 million operation. And in there you see a few line item changes in gifts and grants. There's some increased contributions to athletics, and increased gifts for the Bomir Center, so that up to about $33,000. On the fees side is where the biggest increase was at $345,000. That's increase in dome rentals, which is a good sign, means we have more activity there. Some of that was adjusting the rates. We hadn't adjusted in quite a while. We've been gradually trying to increase that because of higher cost to operate the dome. We need more revenue coming in to cover the costs. The other area we did was increase athletic ticket prices as well as estimated increases in athletic attendance. So those were the primary ones, and that'll generate about $345,000 of revenue. Small net decrease in some other service charges that we have. So total combined $363,000 basically in increased revenue. On the expense side, you have contractual increases as the majority of it, as well as the Title IX position for women's wrestling, and salary increases for our police officers. The POEM agreement we signed earlier is reflected in that total. Supplies and materials, again, a lot of this is travel expenses, as well as increased supplies for rec services, and then utility costs in that facility. Internal billing, you'll see some additional charges for parking. As we have more people on campus, you get more parking registration revenue. And then finally, the transfers is really the offset you get for covering the increases on the designated employees that are related to the general fund. So the net combined total of those is $363,000, and that makes up your changes in the designated fund. So questions on that one? Well, good. Keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
All right. I feel like I'm one of those game shows where you have those slots where you just keep dropping things.
Should we be doing a motion to accept?
We're gonna
We
do
got 2
'em-
more budgets to go through.
Yeah, we're gonna do them all at
Yeah.
once.
The next one up is the auxiliary services budget, and it's about a $13.2 million budget. And the $13.2 million would be higher, but cost of sales offsets the revenue to bring it down to 13.2. The big changes there are our residents' meal plans. We're up in the number of students in the residence halls. We had a rate increase, but even with that, we had a bigger increase in students taking on meal plans from apartments and things, so it's a positive for the revenue. So that was a change of about $851,000. Our catering, it's increased. Northern Center operations, I mean, our rooms are booked all the time here, and so that obviously ups our catering revenue, as well as our Wildcat Den sales have been up, and Starbucks sales. One other thing about Starbucks is we'll be renovating, I think, next year, right, Tom? So that's under our agreement with Starbucks. Every X number of years, you got to renovate the place. So next year will be the time to do that. Every 10 years, Tom? Yeah. And then the other area that's up is our health center revenue. It's a big 11% increase in the number of visits, and that really ties into moving the center over to by the residence halls. And so that was a pretty big boost for them. And those are really the items that make up the revenue increase of about $1.2 million, with increased food revenue comes increased cost of foods because you're delivering the food, and so cost of foods went up about 602,000. Some of that is the health center for the pharmacy supplies. But that creates a net increase in revenues of 641,000. And then the major areas down below is personnel is the major change in the cost for operations. Again, increased activity here, increased activity at Northern Lights Dining. We've added some staff to accommodate that, and we're probably looking at more staff as we keep increasing the amount of activity here. And that obviously is a contractual increases in cost plus some additional staffing on that one. Other than that, the supplies associated with increased operations and an increase in reserves of about $233,000. Auxiliary services as well as housing have to self-fund their renovations, and in dining it's a lot of changeover. You got to keep replacing equipment all the time, and in addition to upgrading the look of the facilities. So there's a continuous cost that gets hit in that area. So that overall change for their budget is about $642,000, and you can see that reflected on the sheets that you have in front of you. Any questions on auxiliary? All right, on to housing. Housing, almost you could take a mirror with dining services budget, because again, their revenue's up 651,000. Some of that is a rate increase that we did, but a big part is that was about 4.5%. But the rest of it is the occupancy is full and a little bit over full, and that creates more revenue for the university. So that's up 651,000. Apartment rents up 126,000. That's primarily the rate change because we were already full in apartments last year. So the overall difference would be the rate change. Personnel, added full-time staff and student labor, as well as some minimum wage increase to support the full occupancy. Obviously, you need additional personnel with the amount of students they're having in those areas. On supplies and equipment, it just costs more to operate when you have more people here. And so that would be the biggest difference, as well as adding about $233,000 to deferred maintenance capital projects. And again, in the housing, we've been trying to attack about 6 apartments a year to continue to upgrade them on an ongoing basis so they don't get too far behind. And we do that almost every year. We had a year where around COVID, obviously, when we didn't do it, but other than that, we've been pretty much keeping pace, and a lot of those are the Lincoln Street apartments that we've been going through. So overall increase, 777,000. So any questions on that one?
Now
Nope.
we're ready.
Now we're ready.
All right.
I'd like to call for a motion to approve these budgets.
I'll make the motion to recommend that the board approve the 2024-25 auxiliary operations, housing and residence life, general fund, and designated fund-based budgets as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Maybe just a few comments from my side. It's, looking at all of this, there's so much positive momentum happening, in the power of an enrollment and the way we can utilize those funds for things like removing, barriers, as well as making investments in personnel that are, here to support our strategic pillars and our mission. So it's spending money, but it's money well spent.
Yeah,
So.
thank you. And yeah, we're making a lot of great investments that I think will really shape the future of the university is the big thing. All right. So should we move on? Thanks, Matt. Maybe Kathy and Jim can come up now too. Next up, we have facilities. And I was going to do just a quick update with them. How are we doing on time? Guess I'm getting a little tight on time here. So just a real quick update on facilities. Projects are moving along. You can see Vandeman Arena, we just finished on the 12th, had a great dedication. A lot of people showed up, and Had a real good crowd for the first volleyball game there. It was pretty exciting. That went well. The Superior Dome turf, we completed that this summer. $2 million project, and it turned out really well. I just wanted to note that our own staff are the ones that did all the painting of the lines. That's something we usually had the vendor do, and this year they took it on, and there's a lot of angst, hey, Kathy, after they got that big green slab of turf in front of them, and it's blank with no outline, no markers. They had to figure it out themselves, and they did an awesome job. College of Business, we're well into planning mode on that. We're trying to get our schematic and programming in by mid to late October. They plan, as of now, they're trying to run something before the end of the year to get construction authorizations so we can move forward fully with it. We did a number of designs. There's actually probably about 12 or 14 designs we went through. We narrowed it down to 3, and we pretty much narrowed it down to option B here. We haven't quite finalized that yet, but we probably will very soon. And this just gives you a different view of each of the types of projects, whether we did A, B, or C. I'm moving sort of quick because I notice our timeline we're real tight on. The other project moving forward is Hardin Hall, and you can see what it should look like when it's done, or will look like when it's done, I should say. And inside, that's what it looks like now. And then on the front of it, they just tore the windows off and some of the outside facades, so it's even more different than the pictures we have here. And but that one's moving along quite well, and it'll be pretty exciting as we get some of that exterior rising up from the ground and get some height on there, and then work on the interior. The Science Complex, another one, it's moving along quite well, adding science labs for biology and chemistry, as well as faculty offices, and we're really happy with the direction of that, and they look like they'll be fully enclosed for winter, which is what I think they want to be. Landscape master plan and campus site design plan. I'm going to have Jim just give a few words about that, if you could, Jim.
Yeah, sure. So Smith Group was up in July for the retreat. They made a presentation on all the design elements. None of those design elements have really changed. What they've been doing since July is developing 3D images, cost estimates, details for all of those development zones. And if you remember, there were kind of 7 of them throughout campus, all connected with the new Wildcat Way Trail. They've also been working earnestly on the landscape maintenance plan, which is really a separate plan that will help us kind of change the landscape on campus, or the approach to landscaping, with an emphasis on using more native or cultivar type plant material. Smith Group will be on campus the middle of October 14th and 15th, to present the plan back to all of the groups that they met with. We'll meet with the advisory group. We'll have a session for students, faculty, staff. Some of these will be focused discussions. Some of these will be open work sessions. But once that's complete, I think Wildcat Way and the Wildcat Way plan will be done. So,
Thanks, Jim. And then another one we're working on is new student housing project, adding 400 beds on Presque Isle. That one's moving along quite well. We expect to be pretty far along with that planning by the time the December board meeting hits. So more to come on that one as we look in the future. So that's a quick update on facilities, and I'm looking at time, so hate to trying to move that along. That one does not need any vote, but what does need consideration is we put our 5-year facilities plan. This is a required filing by the state that we do every year, and as part of that, we also need to submit our number one. Well, submit a capital outlay project, and only one, your number one project, and which is College of Business until it's funded. So after that, we can start looking at other ones. But anyway, there's a big book that they have you fill out a lot of information for, 100 and some pages, and that is in your materials. There's always some last-minute numbers that change that aren't quite ready in there yet, and we'll tweak those before we submit final, but I have to have board authorization to be able to move forward with the exception of some minor changes that could occur.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to recommend the board approve the facility 5-year master plan and the capital project request as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you. It's a lot of hard work by a lot of people to go into it, and Deb over here is rounding everybody up, trying to get them to get it in, so. But anyway, this goes across all the pillars on giving us information to complete that, and I want to thank everybody that gives us information for it. Next one is a long-term maintenance list, and you can see a number of projects in there. General fund, we have about $1.9 million in projects identified. One of which is over 2 years, we're going to try to upgrade the Superior Dome sound system. It's been the same sound system since it opened in 1991, and it's getting a little bad these days when you're at events. So we're looking at trying to, over the next 2 years, build up maintenance dollars to be able to replace that, as well as the usual, when we have to do fume hoods, we're always upgrading those. The Hedgecock IT server room is where some of our main systems are, and we've had cooling problems in that room, and Kathy's going to fix them for us. And a number of other Hardin Hall exterior. There was some areas in Hardin Hall that were a little more in needing of repair that we found as a result of construction, and so we'll have to deal with those out of our separate dollars for that. And then auxiliary services, again, it's upgrading Northern Center, Northern Lights Dining, and then part of it is dollars that we hadn't already put forward for Starbucks are in this total. And residence life, it's the ongoing upgrades to apartments and infrastructure. So a total of $3.7 million in maintenance projects.
Okay, and we will need a motion to recommend that the board approve these long-term maintenance projects.
I'll make the motion to recommend that the board approve the fiscal year 2025 long-term maintenance projects as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the final one is we have 2 liquor licenses we're asking the board to approve. One is for the holiday soiree put on by NMU Theater and Dance. And the other one is the senior show reception for NMU Art and Design at the DeVos Art Museum. So I'll need a board motion on that.
I do have a very important question. Will they be serving Wildcat Gold at these
I am
events?
sure they will. We will be
Okay.
serving at a lot of events this year, including at a number of events this weekend. So
Wonderful. Well, with that, we need a motion.
I'll make the motion to recommend that the board approve the temporary liquor license as presented, and note the Wildcat Gold is going to be part of the activity.
we'll make sure.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
All right, thank you.
All right. Gavin, thank you very much. Thank you to your teams. There's never a dull moment when you and the group gets up to present, and there's just a lot of really incredible things. Looking forward to the press aisle and watching that continue to develop as well. So
Thank you. You know, you see them here. You got Matt, Rebecca, and Jamie, Jill, obviously, Jim, Tom, Kathy, Deb here. Great staff, great staff, and really appreciate them and the work they do.
and we appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and with that, I think that was the last agenda topic. So it is 4:04 on September 19th, 2024, and I'd like to formally adjourn this formal session of the Northern Michigan University Finance Committee Board of Trustees. I don't know, something's out of order there, but meeting adjourned.